So, as is our custom, we are going to start with a short meditation to create some sacred space. So, please relax in your chair and close your eyes. And take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. If thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them go. Like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for planning or solving problems. All you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, it has been a few weeks since we've had a regular Mussar session. So I thought today we could just do a bit of a check-in. Where are you? What has come up either in your Mussar journey or your life with respect to the pandemic or anything else? So who would like to begin? Yes, Joanne. Joanne, I think you're on mute.
I think it's 2 years I've been doing this, and I think I've seen changes, because I've made an effort to try to work on some areas that, are like, or weren't in balance, let's put it that way, and try to find more equanimity. And I think it's helped. The only thing I have to say to the group is I wish someone had told me, though there probably wasn't any way to do that, people who knew that Carol was basically at death's door or whatever, and because I knew she was going to have surgery, but I didn't know what the outcome was supposed to be or what the surgery was for, and so I felt kind of blindsided by the fact that she passed away. So for me, it was suddenly, because I had no idea. That's all. And so, but overall, it's been very helpful, I think, doing this practice.
Great, thank you, Joanne. Anyone else like to check in and see kind of where you are? Yes, Carrie.
Mussar has really changed my life. It has definitely helped me navigate the pandemic without freaking out. And it's just every facet of my life my perspective is different because of what I'm learning and practicing in Mussar and from this community. And I am really, really grateful. So thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Anyone else care to check in? And it doesn't have to be about the impact Mussar's had on you. And if you'd like to share that, that's fine, but just whatever, else may be up. Paul.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned it recently in this group that I have found this practice to be really helpful as an adjunct to what I'm doing in my 12-step program. And it really helps to round out everything in terms of perspectives. And I really appreciate the chance. I think it's brought Carrie and me closer. Certainly I feel closer to her. It's kind of the first time we've really had an ongoing spiritual practice together that we shared. And it really helps to provide, we talked before about inviting God into our experiences of the world or with our experience with other people. And it feels like that's been a really nice practice to have to experience that with Carrie. So thank you for
Wonderful.
that.
Thank you. Yes, and I know, Paul, you shared last week that you started out kind of off camera as a little bit of a lurker and then decided to join us on camera. So if anyone is lurking out there off camera, you're welcome to come on camera, when you are ready to. So we'll have Sarah and then Wendy.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and Bonnie is a good friend of mine and has spoken very highly of this group. And I've been a member at Betham for over 30 years and going through some significant personal, I'm going through a divorce, and now I have some health problems that I'm dealing with currently. But I've always been a seeker of spirituality and have done a lot of different things on that spiritual path, meditator, and have done a lot of different things. And this seemed like a lovely thing to come and check out. I mean, the pandemic's just whipped my butt. And like, many of us has had such a big impact, and plus, so many things that I've been going through. So I'm at a pretty kind of raw situation here, and have had quite a bit of professional help and spiritual help too in this last 18 months that I've been going through this crisis with getting out of a marriage, and then some various other things. So I stopped in last week, but I'm glad Bonnie reminded me again today, and I'll have to put it in my calendar ongoing so I can participate. And I didn't have a chance to do that reading, but I'd be very interested in that. So thank you, and thanks for having a group.
Well, welcome, Sarah, and we're listening with an open heart, and I hope you can find some companions for your spiritual journey here.
Thank you.
Wendy, you're up next.
Okay, thanks. First of all, I'm really grateful for this group, and I don't know if the word would be lucky, but that's how I feel, I suppose. But I got lucky because I kept having disruptions every Thursday at 4, and I could never make it to the group. And I was frustrated. So I emailed Greg and he said, well, you can have, and I don't know the Hebrew word for it, Greg, but a study partner. And so he said, well, is there someone in the group that you would, that you think that you'd like to study with? I said, oh yes, Carol. And he right away said, that's a good idea. And I just couldn't share this last week. I'm sorry, guys. But so I got to spend hours with Carol, and we just became so close and so close friends. And it was just like I felt like I was in school again, or in a sorority or something, because we just had so much in common and shared stories. And I have stories on my computer that she's written. And it was fabulous doing that. And you guys, I hate to tell you this, but you're my lifeline, and you become my help, because before the pandemic, I had a therapist, my rabbi's wife, and she got very sick and she couldn't be my therapist anymore. And many of you may have therapists, but you know how when you're just getting a therapist, you need some time to kind of work things through with the person so they get to know you. And there wasn't any of that time. But then this Mussar group took my place, because I used to go through life, and if I had some hardship or something hard facing, I would put in what I would call my Ellen pocket, and then I would take it to Ellen. And if I've had something in the pocket, I could just go through life and it wouldn't hurt so badly. And then I knew I could take it to Ellen, but now I have the Mussar pocket, and so I could put that in my Mussar. Just being with you guys just helps so much. Being so sensitive, I mean, a lot of people will tell me, you're just so sensitive. You're overly sensitive. And then they go, just breathe. And then I would say to myself, breathe and do what? And it wasn't until I got into this study and practice, I said, okay, breathe and think about all of the traits that you can depend on. And that and then working with my granddaughter, I didn't want to just say, oh, good job to her. And so I took the Mussar trait list and I wrote it so that things that she could understand as just being a baby and everything. And instead of just saying, oh, good, I would just say, that was very generous of you, or, use the Mussar trait. So this has really enhanced my life, empowered me. And I thank you guys so much. And thank you for being patient with me last week. I'm sorry about that.
Well, no one needs to apologize for how they express their grief.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here, and I'm so glad that you and Carol had developed such a close friendship. So I think we have Karen, and then Bonnie, and then we'll have Marianne.
That was a beautiful tribute to Carol. So thank you for sharing that, Wendy. So my share as my study with Mussar continues is that I came across the expression spiritual gardening recently. Different from a spiritual garden. It's not a place that you go to get solace. It's how you nurture your soul. Kind of like taking care of a garden, you take care of your soul spiritually. So I delved a little more into spiritual gardening and just wanted to share that concept with the group. And that is something new that came to me through my Mussar studies.
Wonderful metaphor.
Speaks to anyone else.
Karen.
Enjoy.
Bonnie.
So I think I've been in the group about 7 months, and like Paul, I'm in a 12-step program. I've been in one for 11 years, and I have found that it dovetails itself with the program and the traits in a 12-step program. What I find here is an incredibly supportive group. And I am so thankful to that, to you all. And that everybody who has spoken just, the last few minutes, I couldn't say what you've said better than that. I just so appreciate it. And I find, and especially in this new Midah silence, that I don't have to speak all the time and I can just listen. And I really appreciate it and appreciate everybody in the group. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. Well, let's just take a, oh, Marianne, sorry.
I've been looking for a spiritual home, and I would say this is my spiritual home right now. So it means a lot to me to be able to see all of you every week and to hear what you have to say, because I learn a lot from everyone. And I guess my current struggle, I have some mental health issues, so I struggle off and on with them. But that's the way it is. So I'm very grateful for this group. Very, very grateful.
Thank you, Marianne. Okay, Carrie, you will get the last word in this section. Carrie, I see your hand is up. Did you have something else you wanted to share? Oh, okay. All right, then we'll lower the hand. All right, so as we begin to explore silence, we've done the check-in. We're going to skip our assumption this week. So here's a couple of quotes. We're going to focus on the second one. May I have a volunteer to unmute and read this, please?
The words of the wise spoken softly are accepted. Ecclesiastes 9:12.
Thank you, Marianne. All right, I'm going to copy that into the chat. All right, so the words of the wise spoken softly are accepted. All right, so Ecclesiastes has a lot going on, and a lot of the, and sometimes there are these little pithy sayings. So this is one of them. So what is, the authorship is attributed to King Solomon. So what is he teaching here? What are some of the things that stand out for you? Yes, Karen.
So to me, right away, that says, if you speak with an indoor voice or softly, people have to pipe down to listen to you. It's harder to hear when someone speaks quietly when there is noise around and distractions. So if people listen when you speak softly, then likely your words are being perceived, maybe accepted, understood. That's my take.
Great, thank you, Karen. So one take, if I'm, Karen saying, well, maybe it's an oratory technique, when you lower your voice, you kind of draw people in a little bit and they're going to listen more carefully. Great, what else? How else might we interpret this? Wendy, what are your thoughts?
Just like Karen, I thought about the softness, spoken softly, as being kind of speaking to somebody in loving kindness, not just lambasting it, just speaking softly. It's just more acceptable to receive it. You can receive it.
Yeah, so it might be more easy to receive. People might be more receptive if you're speaking things speaking softly. Great, thank you. You see Karen again. Anyone else want to contribute? We can go back to Karen. What else are you thinking?
I was about to lower my hand, but since you
Oh.
asked, I think I follow with the loving kindness that softly doesn't necessarily mean with tone of voice. That was my first thought, which I still like. But the second is to speak softly might be to speak gently, which would be watching how you say what you say. Because another people respond to words one way, and we change the way we speak. They may not follow right away, may take some time or not, but then they may change the way they respond, i.e. the way they hear you. So they may take your words to heart more.
Yeah, so they might take the words to heart more. What's the opposite of speaking softly? Like what could he be alluding to here? Yeah, Paul.
So the word that comes to me sharply, speaking sharply, as an antonym to speaking softly.
Speaking softly. And then what's the so what then would be the implication of speaking sharply?
So I'll just follow up. So for me, I know that when I speak sharply to somebody, I'm speaking, out of a defensive position or an angry position. I'm not allowing there to be space between me and whoever else is there, as well as space within myself to consider what it is that I'm saying. I'm just, it's sort of erupting out of me without any sense of what it is that I'm even saying.
Yeah, so you may not be thoughtful about it. It just might be coming out. And let's see. So Bonnie raised her hand and Wendy has raised her hand.
I think picking up on what other people said, when I'm annoyed, I don't think the person is in a position to hear what I want to say because I'm not saying it nicely.
Yeah.
I'm loud, and it's not making any difference. And I have to be careful of that.
So if speaking softly is accepted, then in your experience, speaking loudly or sharply or with an annoyed tone is not heard and maybe is not accepted in the same way. Great. Okay, Wendy, and then Marianne, and then Nancy.
Okay, I'm thinking of when I have to discipline a child and they've done something wrong. And if I yell at them and I use sharp words and I don't give them any place to come. It's kind of closes off communication, and my arms aren't open for them to come. Usually, if you speak those wise words to a child softly, and then they see you as the soft spot to come running and hugging and say sorry, and that's just kind of, it's a good idea, because otherwise they're just going to run the other direction and they're not going to hear what you said.
Yeah, thank you. Great. It's good with children, it's good with adults. We've heard a number of perspectives. Thank you. So we have Marianne and then Nancy.
So I think when I speak sharply or with annoyance, it's more about me. But if I'm speaking softly, it's more about the other person.
Great. I love that. Yeah. Sort of when tying that with what Paul said, when we're activated and all upset, we're speaking sharply, we're in the place of me and my hurt and my annoyance and what have you. And we've sort of easy to lose sight of kind of what the other person might need. And not surprisingly, when we're not thinking about the other person, we're thinking about ourselves, that person is much less likely to be receptive to us. Nancy.
Yeah, I'm going to use a different word. What comes to me is tone, because I remember with my parents, they would talk to each other in a tone that was just grating to me, that made me want to retreat. And it's not so much what they said, the words, but it's the tone. And I think we as individuals may sometimes think we're communicating softly, thoughtful, and we don't know how we come across. And that puts the other person in a very uncomfortable position. And so I feel that it's the tone and then speaking to that person really with respect. I guess that's that kind of culminates everything.
Yeah, and I think that's a great sort of connection, because the word softly sort of implies a lot of those things that you talked about. We can certainly very reasonably interpret those into kind of the spirit of the message. So yeah, I like that. I think what you said is a very good segue to the next slide. We're going to look at the spectrum a little bit more next week, but the full quote, the mantra is above, and the full quote is, before you speak, pause and think, what benefit will my speech bring me or others? So how might this sort of sit next to the first round that we talked about? Speaking quietly, pausing and reflecting on the impact of others. How do those fit together? And Nancy.
Would you mind putting that up again in the chat? Because this really resonates with something that happened to me a couple weeks ago. I was having dinner with I think this topic, silence, fits right up my alley right now, because we were at a dinner and I said something and my husband later said that was uncalled for. And I'm like, really? Again, I'm kind of capturing what I said a few minutes before. It's not the tone, but sometimes we don't realize what we say. Our words can hurt somebody. And I didn't mean that at all. That was not my intention. And so he said, kind of what this is saying, next time think before you speak. And that's really, I really took that as, oh my gosh, is it, because sometimes I know when I do speak, it really resonates with people. But I guess on the other hand, sometimes when I do it can really bother somebody. So I think I need to think about it before I speak. So this is great. Thank you for putting up again.
Sure. Okay, well, let's move on to the next one, because we're going to do one more text and then we'll go to our breakout groups. May I have a volunteer to read the second bullet by Rabbi Sheffa Gold?
As a young rebel, oh, go ahead, Paul.
Are you sure?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, this really resonates with me. I remember being this young. As a young rebel, my truth sometimes lacked kindness. My passion for justice sometimes shattered peace. Yet what a blessing it was for the power of Korach to rise in me and teach me that my pointed challenges and questions were holy. Over a lifetime of mistakes and repentance, wisdom gradually emerges to call together kindness and truth and to kindle the love between justice and peace.
Thank you, Paul. Stop the share. I'm going to put the full quote in the chat, and then I'm actually going to get a small version of that quote. Sheffa Gold's book, Torah Journeys, is really wonderful. It's kind of a spiritual journey through each week's Torah portion. So if you're into that kind of thing, it's really really interesting. She has like 2 or 3 pages on each portion, so they're pretty short. So when we go into breakout groups, here is our topic. So based on that reading, the question is, when are you maybe challenged to speak the truth with kindness? What are situations where it's harder for you to do that? And then if you have time, discuss maybe, is there a conflict between justice and peace? And what might that be about? Okay, so let me open the breakout rooms here. All right, here we go. Okay, for those of you streaming, this is where we end the streaming portion of our gathering each week. Thank you so much for being here. Please drop by the American Mussar YouTube channel to see a recording of the full session after we come back from the breakout groups, or to see past sessions. Also, you're welcome to come by americanmussar.com and sign up for our email list, where you will get our every other week email with an introduction to each topic. Thanks so much. Bye. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So I'm curious, how were your conversations? What were some of the areas that you found it difficult or challenged to speak with kindness? And did anyone talk about justice and peace? Yeah,
Well, I
Karen.
think in our group, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Of Karen and then Marianne.
The short of this is that the most difficult conversations for me, where I need to merge truth and kindness, come from talking with someone who says, I or someone I care about has all of these physical symptoms, and the doctors have been running all different kinds of tests, and they all keep coming back negative, but I know it's not a mental health issue. And that's a challenge that I wish I didn't come across as often as I do, but I'm really proud of the way I have learned to navigate that, and I don't back away from it. Especially when somebody says, when somebody says, well, what do you think?
Well, thank you for sharing that, Karen. That sounds like a real significant challenge. And I think it's great that you have sort of the self-awareness that is a challenge, because then that, when we understand ourselves and understand the times when we're challenged, that gives us an opportunity to make different choices and to kind of hang in there and navigate the challenge, as opposed to if we bury our heads in the sand and we don't know, then we just get sort of buffeted around and bumped around by our emotions in those situations. Any other thoughts? Anyone else care to share an insight that you had? Bonnie.
So I have a friend here who's sitting in and he wanted to speak.
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, Rabbi. Thank you so much for your introduction about the hearing and Shema at the beginning. So good. It's a very peaceful way to start the conversation. So during the breakout seat, we're talking about speaking. And one of the thoughts I have is about before speaking to think about whose issue is it of who the words are going to be. So is it am I saying something because it's something my issue, or is it something about the other person's issue? And because I think that can help, again, speak in a more softer tone. Because if I speak harshly and it's the other person's issue, how well is that going to be received? So that's the thing. Whose issue is it? And then think about then what words affect, respond that way. So, but thank you so much for this question about how will one's speech affect the other person or yourself.
Sure. And if you don't mind my asking, what's your name?
What's that?
Oh, just what's your name?
Martin. Yeah.
Martin. Great. Well, thank you, Martin, for contributing. And yeah, I think that's so important to kind of remember. Is this my issue? Is it their issue? And if it's our issue, it's okay. But it reminds me of the advice, to use I language, to say, hey, this is, I was in an argument with my wife last week and we're going blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I didn't feel hurt. She's like, oh, okay, that's something I can work with, as opposed to all of the other things I said, which were not remotely helpful. So yes. Bye, Sarah. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other thoughts? Barry, you look like you're percolating there a little bit. Anything you'd like to share with us? You're on mute.
No, it's a great topic, and we went back and forth on a number of those issues. But at the end, we said, sometimes it's good to be silent and not to say anything and see what percolates up instead of arguing. And sometimes you just be quiet, and then, which I think is a great trait to learn and to be better at.
Yeah. One of the other mantras that I think it might even be the one in the book, which is, nothing is better than silence. And, certainly for me and the way I was raised, silence was not the default. But the more I've sort of worked on Mussar, the more I've tried to make silence the default and speech if I have something to contribute, I'll speak. If I don't, I won't.
And there is another technique that I've learned, and it's been helpful. If someone's arguing with you or telling you something, instead of just responding, you just sort of say, "Tell me more." Tell me more. And it's amazing when you say, "Tell me more," something comes up that says, "Hey, there is something we can connect on." And then maybe I misunderstood what you were telling me. Because when you say "tell me more," it's forcing the other person to think. And so that's just another technique to say, "Tell me more."
Thank you, Barry. See, Karen and Bonnie, did you raise your hand again, or is that still from before? Okay, so I have Karen and then Bonnie.
I came across a couple of words in the book Everyday Holiness, and I don't remember them verbatim, but the gist of it was that silence is an interpersonal skill. And I just thought those few words were great, and I've been percolating on them on and off. And so maybe more to share about that next week. We think of it as personal, one person, but to think of silence as interpersonal and that relationship with others, I'm still working on it.
That's very cool.
Curious
Thank you
comment.
for surfacing that. Yeah, I'm going to think about that one too. Very interesting. Okay, Bonnie and then Wendy.
So following up with what Harry said, which, tell me more, is also an opportunity for you to really think about what the person has to say. The other piece I use when I'm really frustrated with somebody, and I am sure they are 100% wrong, gets me out of trouble, which is, "You might be right." It is, "You are so wrong 99.9% of the time, but maybe you might be right." And it ends any argument. any argument. I mean, it works with teenagers. So often they are just so stunned by that comment
Mm.
that the silence works.
Great. Well, if you can stun a teenager into silence, that's powerful. Thank you. Okay, Wendy.
Well, I think, Greg, you said navigate the challenge, or Karen said something about navigating the challenge. And I was thinking, I just wrote down the word preparation, and I was thinking, yes, this is one of the traits that help us prepare to navigate the challenge. So silence actually prepares us to navigate the challenge of speaking kindly, speaking wisdom with kindness.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. It reminds me of a question, is like preparing to navigate the challenge. Why do we meditate at the beginning of every meeting?
Focus,
Mhm.
quietness.
I would
Yeah.
say to make themselves more open.
Mhm.
We can also, clear our minds, as Nancy just wrote, to get rid of everything else and just be present.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what I think of. And I think there's a certain, we were talking about order. Was it just 2 weeks ago that we were on order? I've very deliberately decided I'm going to open with the same meditation every time. And other Mussar groups and Mussar facilitators, they might say, every week we're going to do something different. And I thought, for me, what works best for me and for what I wanted to do is to create a certain order, a certain expectation to help people kind of get into that preparatory mode. It's like a lot of like the chants and the readings and things are really beautiful, but it gets me thinking. And if it's different every time, I won't necessarily kind of drop into the space. So that's, bringing together order and silence, planning and preparing, is a way. And it's so funny because like when we're doing a meditation, we're not actually planning. We are letting go of our thoughts. We're opening ourselves up, which then leaves us more prepared for a open-hearted conversation. Karen, I see your hand is up as well.
I was just thinking about the Pavlov dog response, and that when you choose to open with the same meditation week after week, people will recognize it and sort of move right from that into the class. Like they expect that and they know what follows. You're right, it prepares them. But if they heard something different every time, they might be thinking about it and not quite so prepared to come into class. They probably don't even have to really focus on the words after you've done that several weeks, if they're not familiar with them, because they know them, and then they close their eyes and just be in the moment and slide right into what's coming next, because they're free to do that. I think maybe the repetition helps that.
Yeah, thank you. I think those are all, that's sort of in line with my instinct on this. All right, before we do our closing meditation, I'm going to put up the list of possible actions as a reminder for the mantra. What benefit will my speech bring me or others? It's from Rabbi Menachem Mendeleev in his book Heshbon HaNefesh. And then in silence, read some of these possible actions and pick one that maybe speaks to you or something that you might want to try for next week. And when we get back together and open, there'll be an opportunity to talk about what practice you picked, and it could be something on this list, could be something else. In a moment, I'm going to stop the share. And then we'll move on to our closing meditation. So please close your eyes and get comfortable. And today we will close with a minute of silence. Well, friends, thank you so much for being here this week.
Greg,
Yes.
I just want to let everybody know on Monday, there's going to be Ken Burns is doing a documentary on Ben Franklin.
Oh, yeah.
It's two episodes. And the reason you may want to watch it is he has a connection to Mussar.
Yeah, yeah.
And Greg, do you want to mention that, what that connection is?
Sure. Well, I mentioned this book, Heshbon HaNefesh, where we took our mantra for the week. And that was published in 1818 or 1812 in the Ukraine. And he actually based like his 13 midot and this practice of doing a mantra and journaling at night on Ben Franklin's autobiography. And he wrote in a private letter that he did not attribute it to Franklin because he felt the Jewish machers would not accept the Gentiles' wisdom. So he just, I know you might find that shocking behavior, but it is unfortunately true. And I'm being a little sarcastic because that is, the Jewish community can be very insular at times. And so it's really, he had a huge influence on the Mussar movement. And
in a sense, he's indirectly started it in a way. But what's also interesting is what you're going to learn, which I got a little bit of a preview, is how critical he was for the revolution. He was actually a generation older than the founders, and he was the wise man.